Feminism has always had contradictory meanings in my entire life. While some talk about the greatness of feminism, other people see it as rebellion. This movement is seen as being anti-men, however, this is not the case. Feminism is the ideology and movement for political, social, and economic equality of the sexes. It's a way to reduce the effects of gender inequality and discrimination that 51% of the population suffers from. Because gender inequality affects the lives of all females regardless of age, it is a major social issue. Although decades of advocacy have passed, there is still ignorance about feminism and the existence of gender inequality. Some people argue that there is no such thing as gender inequality. Other people hold a belief that in order for women to better themselves and be treated as equals, men have to suffer. This brings up the question, how can we purge the negative beliefs associated with gender inequality and feminism? Research conducted on gender inequality makes it clear that the only way we can do this and reduce the consequences of gender inequality is through the incorporation of women into male-dominated fields. With the increasingly high rates of female college graduates, it's easy to believe that incorporating women into male-dominated fields won't be challenging. Sadly, this is quite formidable. In the article, Do Women Who Succeed in Male-Dominated Domains Help Other Women? Moderating the Role of Gender Identification, the authors, Cheryl Kaiser and Carrie Spalding, inform us that at most 25% of male-dominated fields are comprised of women and that only 7.2% of women worked full-time in male-dominated fields. The authors also tell us that these low rates of cooperation could be caused by the consequences that women in these fields face, including stereotypes, societal expectation of women's abilities and leadership skills, lack of opportunity in these fields, higher stress and anxiety compared to women in other fields, and sexual harassment. A study conducted by Psychological Reports found that women in male-dominated majors experience increasing amounts of harassment and discrimination in comparison with their counterparts in different degrees. The product of this discrimination is the low percentage of women in important positions. The founder of the Women in Innovation Lab and neuroscientist Janet Crawford tells us that although women make up 51% of the population in 2018, women made up only 18% of Congress and 5% of CEOs. Ms. Crawford also informs us that this discrimination is a consequence of unconscious gender biases that are normalized in our society. A study that she conducted using the implicit association test found that most people, both men and women, would describe men as leaders and strong and use words like fragile and nurturing towards women. This association between gender and characteristics explains why the research article Investigation on the Impact of Gender on Rank and Resume Search Engines found that although men and women can have equally exceptional resumes and the same levels of education, employers will be more likely to hire men unless the occupation is thought to be a woman's job. In order for women to be embraced in what are now male-dominated occupations, we must tackle the root causes of gender inequalities in education. Authors Arusha Kure and Nicholas Potrovsky focus on discovering the root cause of gender inequalities in education in their article, Gender Inequality in Education. They analyze political systems, culture, and religion on standards of education from 157 countries over the time period of 1991 to 2006 and found a strong correlation between education and culture or religion. Mr. Kure and Mr. Potrovsky's research allows us to understand that the cause of this social problem is truly caused by the social norms and beliefs that have been ingrained into the American culture. Although the root cause of the issue is our biased thought pattern, it isn't the only reason gender equality is still so present even after years of advocacy. Roughly half of the population is unjustifiably discriminated against for a characteristic that they were born with and had no control over. This inhumane discrimination has led to a screwed educational institution and a prominently large wage gap. Putting this into perspective, we can see the importance of this social issue. The combination of unconscious gender biases in culture and education, unawareness of gender inequality, and the lack of representation of women in leadership roles creates a concoction that fuels the oppression of women in our society as well as gender inequality. This information makes it crystal clear that in order to reach gender equality through the incorporation of women in male dominated fields, women and men must first become aware of being accomplices to discrimination and become aware of the biases in our society. In order to make resounding strides, we must then change the ingraining ideologies of gender roles in our culture. This seems like a difficult task to accomplish, but major development can be made simply by becoming aware of societal gender biases. We can begin to understand that like a girl isn't an insult, gender isn't an indicator for skill or value, and women's opinions do matter. In addition, feminism should stop being perceived through radical and vivid displays of hate towards men, and should be perceived in a positive light. It is beneficial to begin perceiving ourselves as human beings and collaborate with each other instead of competing with each other for superiority. Understanding a united and equally incriminating set of information, we can work together to fix the problems previous generations weren't capable of.